G'day, Binansians, and welcome back to this week's episode of Binance Beach. I'm your host, Liam, joined this week by my Kiwi colleague, Ollie. Mate, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, now I don't know if we've done an episode together, have we? Have we? Oh, no, we did. We did one with Greenie. That's right. You've hosted the show a few times,
Yeah,
though, while I've been away, which has been cool. It's good to have you on as a guest. Obviously, we're chatting the complete meltdown that has been crypto markets and a lot of markets this week. We've had some pretty bearish sentiment on the cards. So we're going to run through what's going on, what drove markets down, why Bitcoin has been losing against commodities, which I think is the key question that we're all asking at the end of 2025 and looking ahead into 2026. We'll look at gold versus Bitcoin. Maybe we'll cover off some fundamentals there, and then we'll talk about keeping your head through periods of market volatility. So, bit of markets, bit of FUD fighting, and maybe some good vibes to finish. First up, man, it's been a pretty brutal week. I feel like I was ready to call the bottom yesterday, and then I woke up today and we'd run a little further down. Do you want to talk us through where we're at with Bitcoin markets at the moment, Ollie?
yeah, man. Well, yeah, as you say, it's been pretty rough, but in the grand scheme of things, I think there's just a broader risk-off mood across equities and crypto. Like it's been pretty rough, and I think people are losing a little bit of hope after talking all super cycle and what's next and seeing all the inflows. But at the end of the day, you can't really predict anything, and volatility is just information at the end of the day, and not a signal to panic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said this to someone the other day. I was kind of like, Bitcoin's going to Bitcoin. Like, we know Bitcoin's volatile. I've done a whole episode about why Bitcoin's volatility is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And so we do need to experience the downside to experience the upside. And I know if anybody's been following kind of AI developments, we've had this crazy stuff going on with Claude Bot, gone Maltbot, gone OpenClaw, and that seemed to impact tech stocks a bunch. And then that also seemed to push broader risk off sentiment. We also had the nomination of Kevin Warsh as Fed chair, which made people concerned about maybe a higher for longer interest rate environment. And then there's ongoing geopolitical tensions between the US and Iran. There's just a bunch of, I guess, kind of like bearish news or just uncertainty that we're seeing that has driven this kind of risk off sentiment. And it hasn't just happened in Bitcoin, right? It hasn't just happened in crypto. It's happened in tech stocks in particular. Any thoughts on this little melting pot of bearish information and how it drove the market down?
Yeah, well, to start, the thing about Kevin Wash, at the end of the day, he's still a Bitcoiner. So that's what
He
we got to
is.
remember. It's still positive. And, short term fair, long term neutral to positive for the narrative, hopefully. And, the geopolitical side, drives flows into perceived safe havens, right? So gold, commodities, the US dollar, etc. Historically uncertain strengthens the sovereignty trade, and yeah, I just think it's all a part of the market cycle. It's part of life. There's always going to be uncertainty, but it's about zooming out and thinking about the long-term goals that you have as a trader and as an investor.
That's absolutely true. And I think maybe we got over our skis a little bit last year with the end of the 4 year cycle. We're going up forever, or maybe we're not
Yeah,
going down as much. But, if Bitcoin does one thing consistently, it's surprise people, even though it is such a consistent thing. Like you produce a block every 10 minutes and, you have this immutable ledger. Like there's so much certainty and so much concrete predictability about Bitcoin, and then the fact that it's such a free market asset and it's the most liquid asset in the world continues to surprise people, and we get so nervous when all of a sudden it goes down and we get to stack sats a little bit cheaper for a while. Commodities have been running not just this year but last year as well. Do you have any thoughts, Ollie, on the debasement trade as it's been called, and the position of Bitcoin right now as a tradable asset compared to gold?
Yeah, well, governments print, currencies weaken. That's kind of the overall. And Bitcoin is the hardest asset, but also the most reflexive, right? It can't be easily created or inflated. It's predictable and fixed supply, and is expensive and hard to manipulate politically. Like at the end of the day, if you're zooming out and looking at all assets, in my opinion, not financial advice, I like the look of Bitcoin over everything else.
That's very true. I mean, here's the chart of gold, and even gold had some wild volatility earlier in the week as well. I mean, we had like a 10% change in the price of gold one day, and that range is
Yeah.
13.5% in a moving gold. That's wild. And there was this story, I think, for a long time that Bitcoin was going to grow up and get less volatile, and we were going to, mature into financial markets. And then you watch what silver's done for the past few months since like October, and you look at a 15% move in gold, and you just think everybody's coming down to our level. We're not growing up.
Yeah.
Everyone's coming down to us. There's this great tweet here from Oliver Velez. Gold is out here trading like fart coin. I never want to hear from a gold bug again that Bitcoin can't be money because it's too volatile. They've lost the rights to say that to all Bitcoiners. Because 100%, like that move in gold in particular was incredible. It was just remarkable. I guess I'd love your thoughts on this because I feel like I've read a little bit on this for the last couple of weeks, and this is definitely where my head's at, and where we're at with the debasement trade. Right, we have this risk off flight to commodities. The debasement trade is in full swing, and for anybody who's hearing that for the first time, it's really just the fancy new name for what has been the gold trade since 2008 and what has broadly been the Bitcoin trade. And that's the idea that there is a wealth transfer, there is a transfer of purchasing power from soft fiat currencies, which are easy to create, into assets that are much harder to produce. And obviously, that is gold and that is Bitcoin. But there's this phenomenon, right? The gold has been a hard money. Gold has been a hard asset throughout history. But when you research the history of money and you research the history of gold, you can find all of these instances where gold has been confiscated by states, and your hard asset that you stacked is confiscated, and then it's devalued, and then your fiat currency that you're given in exchange for that confiscation, because it's not always I guess what you would consider 100% theft. It's not always confiscated in absolute terms. It's often, forcibly, and then the fiat currency that you're given in return is devalued. And so when you think about this, you think about like risk off assets, risk off sentiment, this debasement trade towards commodities and hard assets. And you think about this idea that, we're going to trade into gold until the point at which gold is confiscated, and then gold loses that status, gold loses that sovereignty position. And while some people can keep hard gold under their bed in their safe, buried in the backyard, it's very hard to do at scale. And there's also been some really interesting tweets and information recently about people actually now trying to offload physical gold, physical silver, finding that incredibly difficult and expensive process. And while there might be a spot price where you can buy that paper asset, there's actually not a market for the real asset. And so I almost wonder whether this is the rotation of the sovereignty trade, is out of gold into Bitcoin. When you see markets like Venezuela, where there's all of a sudden this critical political turmoil, where people are suddenly very concerned about the confiscation of assets or the forced liquidation of assets, and they move to, something which is much harder and much harder to be confiscated. And so I think this is a really important one to watch, is in these markets. And I know, like when you looked at Google search trends, I should have pulled these tweets up for Bitcoin, for USDT in Venezuela around the turmoil that they had earlier in the month, or earlier, last month. These huge surges in searches for both gold, but also for USDT and also for Bitcoin. And it does definitely look like when these assets come up against their most difficult circumstances, like the most there's a good word for it, which is going past me now, but the hardest circumstances in which to hold an asset over time. People are not just turning to gold now, they are turning to Tether, they are turning to Bitcoin, because these are assets which are far easier to maintain sovereignty through these periods of crazy kind of geopolitical tension. Any thoughts on that? Agree, disagree?
No, I'm with you on that. As you say, excuse me, Bitcoin, is like digital, borderless, self-custodied, and as you say, we're seeing, well, in my eyes, the younger generation, preferring Bitcoin. And as we talk about that gold to Bitcoin rotation, it's early signs, and we'll watch the liquidity, not the headlines. Media and the news will say everything, but it's all about keeping an eye on doing your own research and really locking your own opinions and thoughts into your trading strategy.
Yeah, and at the moment, right, like the gold market cap is being pumped by the old money, I think. And there's a lot more old money than the young money. Like when you look at wealth and how it's held by different generations, old money likes gold, likes those physical assets. Young money likes Bitcoin, but there's less of it to go into that asset. And of course, I spoke about this on the episode a couple of weeks ago with central bank buying of Bitcoin. If you can print money to buy gold, the central bank buying gold. If you can print money to buy gold, you can buy gold till the cows come home, and that hidden tax on your population is not considered as taking taxpayer money and buying gold or buying a sovereign asset. It's an excellent business model. Central banking as the the ex-Kiwi. What was Anyway, that was a cracking quote from him. How do you keep your head through periods of market volatility? What are you doing at the moment to stay on track?
So yeah, the volatility, it shakes conviction, right? It shakes you out of positions. It shakes your confidence, but it doesn't shake the fundamentals of what Bitcoin and crypto is actually. And the main thing I'm doing is try not to overtrade chop. Don't get your head stuck in trying to catch up and downs. Zoom out. Stick to the horizons, not the candles. That's what I like to tell myself. Look at long term again. I'm a big long term guy. So yeah, I like to look at the horizons, not the candles. And most losses come from reacting, not holding. So it's all about that hodler mentality, DCA, take care of your wealth and just hold on to it.
Yep, that's true. And I was talking to someone the other day and I was kind of saying, like if you want to spend Bitcoin right now, it's not a great thing to see the price going down. But if you want to acquire Bitcoin right now, it is a great thing to see the price going down and you get more sats for your dollars. And that's cool. Bitcoin's on sale. Happy days. On the zoom out, this is a great kind of tweet from the Permabill Rail poll. The game you should be playing, market cap from 3 trill to 100 trill in the next 8 to 10 years. Hold high quality assets and do nothing, right? That exactly speaks to what you're saying. And when you like look at the little red dip that we've got at the end here, this is a log chart, but is it huge? Is scheme of things, it's not crazy. It's not that much. Zoom out and hey, we might have a bullish indicator here in the McRib.
Yeah, do you eat indicator.
Do you eat McRibs?
Well, we don't have them.
Buy a McRib? You don't have them in New Zealand?
No, we don't have them in Kiwi land, but I'd like to keep my eye on it. As you can see from that chart, hey, there might be a little bit of underlying truth there.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll shout you a fillet of fish if we come across for a meetup in New Zealand, and we could have I guess if it's bullish, maybe we should have cow. Maybe we should have an Angus burger.
Yeah.
Angus beef. I mean, couple of memes to finish off, Ollie. You want to finish with some sentiment here?
Yeah, I threw this one in. It's like we got the chance to buy Bitcoin now. We'll hopefully be laughing in 40 years. So, and that's what people who had the chance to buy Bitcoin will be doing, dancing in a big crowd, looking a bit funny.
Yeah, there we are, holding hands here too. I remember when we did that podcast and Bitcoin went down to Ooh, Bitcoin down 75K. I thought this one was pretty funny too.
70K. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now, you know. But using all my fiat or whatever you want to call it to buy the real asset, you know. And dinners are going to be light in the next couple months, I feel.
Stay stay humble, stack sats, and laugh at the memes. Enjoy making fun of yourself while we have the opportunity. Any closing thoughts, closing sentiment, mate, before we wrap it up and
100%.
go back to helping more people discover Bitcoin?
Yeah, closing thoughts for me is, you know, Bitcoin is still up massively on a multi-year time frame. You know, adoption continues quietly, infrastructure keeps improving, and short-term noise is long-term, but the long-term trend is still intact. You know, keep stacking sats, keep doing your own research, and just all I can say is dive deeper into the golden pill,
Yeah, 100%. And
orange
you
pill.
know, I think you know, I love to take the opportunity at these kind of times to really try and tune out price action, and go and do reading, read history, read economics books, go and read or listen to great Bitcoin content, great crypto content. Just go and learn. And by the time I'm done with whatever is really interesting that I'm reading or listening to, usually the market's turned anyway, and then there's something new to look at or think about. Let's wrap it up there. Have a great weekend, guys. Thanks for jumping on, Ollie. And yeah, we'll see you next week for another markets discussion. Maybe we have green, maybe we have red. Who knows? But I think we'll both be taking advantage of you know, the red while we can. So yeah, enjoy Binance. Have a great weekend. Please note that this discussion includes insights from non-affiliated third parties and key opinion leaders. Binance provides this platform for informational and educational purposes only and is not responsible for any content or insights provided. This information should not be considered as financial, tax, or investment advice from Binance. DYOR Binance.